Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Navigating the Career Fair as a CLAS Major. My name is Clarice Pennick, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a senior human development and family sciences major here at UConn, and I am a career intern with the CLAS engagement and outreach team at the Center for Career Development. I will be leading you through this presentation today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. You should see your attendee interface on your computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner. You're listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and these will be addressed during the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Once you leave today's webinar, you will be directed to an evaluation for the presentation, and we would appreciate if you would complete that and provide your feedback. Note that today's presentation is being recorded and will be emailed to all webinar registrants within 24 hours. Today we have 3 employer panelists with us, all of whom are here to share their insight into their own recruiting processes, their experiences meeting students, and to answer any questions you may have. All of our employers today here recruit CLAS majors and can explain how they recruit, their career fair experiences, and more. All right, would everyone like to say hi that's on our panel?
Yes, I'll begin. My name is Aaliyah Anderson, and I am a career consultant with a focus on College of Liberal Arts and Sciences majors. Heather, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name is Heather McHugh. I'm the Talent Acquisition Sourcing Specialist for Hartford Healthcare, focusing on the community network and rehab.
Hey everyone, I'm Jordan Boss with Insight Global. I am the Talent Acquisition Specialist that covers recruiting and hiring internally for our Northeast offices.
Leah, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm going to read a brief bio about each of our employers today to highlight everything that they're doing in their individual roles and to give you a little bit more information about each of them. So starting with Jordan. Jordan, as he mentioned, is a talent acquisition specialist at Insight Global. He attended UMass from 2008 to 2012 and graduated with a management and marketing double major, then went on to get his master's from UMass Lowell as well. Graduated in 2014 and accepted a recruiter position at Insight Global in Boston and was promoted in 2015 to the talent acquisition team. So now he's in charge of recruiting top-tier talent from colleges and universities throughout New England and the Midwest. He currently lives in Boston with his golden retriever, Captain. Heather, as she mentioned also, is the talent acquisition sourcing specialist for Hartford Healthcare. She's worked there for almost 2 years, where she sources for the community network, focusing on physical therapists, home care registered nurses, skilled nursing facilities, and oncology nurses. She also assists in managing the candidate attendance for her virtual hiring events. And prior to that, she worked for 3 years at a small environmental company as a talent acquisition specialist, where she acted as a recruiter, a benefits specialist, and she handled employee relations as well. She received her master's in organizational leadership from Quinnipiac in 2018. Leah, our final panelist, is a graduate from 2014. She graduated with an accounting degree, as well as a 2015 master's grad. She began her career in the field of auditing at PricewaterhouseCoopers, or PwC. After realizing a career in accounting wasn't a good fit for her, so she started pursuing the field of recruiting. She worked at a staffing agency for a short time, and she found her home at Northwestern Mutual, where she now runs the internship program for both the West Hartford and New Haven offices. She works to recruit, coach, and develop students into successful financial advisors, and as a proud Husky, she loves giving back to the UConn community any way she can. So thank you all for attending. We're going to get started and talk a little bit about what this virtual career fair week is going to look like. Our fall career fairs, typically in person, will be held this semester in a virtual format as well, so students and our employers can still attend, but remotely. For any questions regarding that change, please feel free to get in touch with our office and ask any questions during our webinar today that you would like clarification on. We'll be reviewing lots of information today that will help you prepare, so I encourage you all to jot down any information you may find helpful throughout the webinar. As far as the schedule goes for our career fair week, on Monday, we have our Actuarial Sciences Fair. On Tuesday, we have our Healthcare, Entertainment, Sports and Media, and Creative Communications Fair. This would include items such as health insurance, wellness, physical training, ad agencies, media, etc. On Wednesday, we have our Insurance and Financial Services and Retail Fair, which includes banks, mutual funds, financial advisors, e-commerce, and more. On Thursday, we'll have our Social Impact and Government Fair, which includes nonprofit organizations, social services, education, legal roles, and government roles as well. On Friday, we have our STEM Fair also. This would include engineering, manufacturing, IT, data, research, environmental roles, and science-geared roles. And as we said, the benefit of having this virtual career fair is that you can participate anywhere you are, and they will be taking place on Handshake. This year, as I mentioned, all of our virtual fairs will be happening on Handshake, and employers can host sessions with students individually or in a group. In group sessions, up to 50 students can join a single one and can engage with employers in a larger virtual setting. Our one-on-one sessions are individual 10-minute conversations with a representative of the company, likely more similar to walk-up conversations you may have at an in-person fair. Each employer can have up to 15 representatives present at the fair. For each of these sessions, you do not need to use video, but audio is required. Also, the technology will likely work better and with less potential issues if you use a laptop or desktop computer instead of your mobile device. Right. In order to sign up for sessions with employers, you must have a public profile on Handshake and you must be registered for the fair. First, navigate to the events page via the top menu bar and select career fairs. Click on the name of the fair you'd like to register for, then click register in the upper right-hand corner of the page, which you'll see an example of on the right. If you see a fair or event you'd like to save to review later, you can click the bookmark icon to the far right of the fair name to save it. You can use the saved filter on this page to locate saved events and fairs. Once you've registered for the fair, you'll be able to view and sign up for available employer sessions. Click the Available Sessions tab in the upper left of the page, below the fair title and date name. If you don't see any sessions available for a certain employer, you can check back closer to the date of the fair. They may not have added any slots yet and will add as needed. Completing your Handshake profile is key to making sure you can participate fully in the fair. First, hover over your profile icon in the top left of your screen with your mouse and click on Settings and Privacy in the drop-down menu. From there, scroll down until you see Personal Information. Here you can include your pronouns if you choose to do so as well. Under Privacy, you can decide what audience sees your profile. You can either choose Community, Employers, or Private. In order for you to engage with employers and allow them to see your profile during, before, and after the career fairs, however, you have to select either Community or Employers. For your education section, along with your other sections, you can click the pencil next to your name and make sure you have your major and start/end dates filled out. For your work section, make sure each has a job title, employer, time period, and location. Add any organizations and extracurricular activities you may be a part of on campus or off. You can also add your skills, documents, courses, and projects that you have. Here's where you'd include your resume, and also try and add a profile picture so you can get to 100%. Once you get to 100% on your Handshake profile, filling all this out and rounding out your profile will help you stand out to an employer and help demonstrate your commitment to making the most of your experience at the virtual career fairs, and it will set you up for success. All right, With that in mind, let's now get into what you can personally do in preparation for the career fair. Approach this virtual fair as you would an in-person fair. You still need to prepare a resume, an elevator pitch, and do an adequate amount of research. Before we begin, let's talk about your goals for attending the career fair. Having these goals will help you establish a clear purpose and guide your actions with intent. In the next couple of days, you should consider the following questions. What are your reasons for attending the career fair? What do you hope to gain in speaking with employers? What is the main accomplishment you wish to reach at the career fair? And what is something you'd like to learn more about in order to better prepare? Answering these questions will help you establish clear action goals in successfully preparing and then participating in our virtual career fair. Now you can take a second if you'd like to write down some notes or thoughts, if you'd like to consider what you would like to speak with employers about, or your reasons for attending the career fair, and any goals you may have. Moving on, the most important thing to do before the career fair is research. Familiarize yourself with the employers that will be attending the fair and create a list of those that you would like to virtually meet. For a complete list of employers, you can download our career fair app, Handshake, or go to their website. This list is already uploaded and you can start looking into the employers attending now. This will provide you with event details and more. Using this information, you can visit employers' websites and research what they do, their mission, or available positions. You can even visit LinkedIn profiles of employees at companies of interest to gather as much information as possible. Based on this, you can sit down and come up with at least 3 questions to ask employers. This will show them that you're genuinely interested in their company and getting to know more about them. So turning to our panel now, could one or two of you share any insight you have into these questions on screen? What would you recommend students know or maybe do not ask for information about when entering your room during our upcoming virtual fair? Or where or what resources would you say are the best place to find more information about your company? Anyone can start.
Yeah, I guess I can start. So I guess in terms of what information, do I recommend students know about a company before coming into that conversation? The worst thing that someone can do, or not the worst thing, but something that, is a kind of a little pet peeve of ours is that when someone comes up and goes, hey, what do you guys do, right? So I think having a good sense of information is what the company does, and you don't have to know everything, but have a good gist of what they do, what they're hiring for. Obviously, you can do that by research on Handshake. There's usually a job posting. So I think kind of know what the company does, what they're actively interviewing or hiring for. It's always, good for sure. And the best place to find, information about that would be on either, as I mentioned, on Handshake, on that job posting, company website, company social media accounts for sure. If you have any mutual friends that work in the company, maybe they graduated a year or two before you, or it's a family friend that works at the company, utilize them. So I think all of those things are really, valuable in learning more about the company before you speak to somebody at a career fair.
Absolutely, I think that's so important. Thank you for that insight. Does do either Heather or Leah have anything to add to that?
Yeah, this is Heather, and I apologize. My kittens are running all over my apartment, making a lot of noise. But
no worries.
One thing that really, and I agree with Josh. Another thing too is not asking, "What do you have for me?" If you're not doing research, it's really difficult for a recruiter to talk to that because, as with Hartford Healthcare, we have over 2,000 open positions. So I don't know what I have for you. It also tells me that you're not prepared to talk to me about what you're looking for. So doing that research, trying to find out what positions we have. And if you're not 100% sure, just ask me. This is my major. This is what I'm looking to do. Can you lead me in the right direction? I think is a better way to approach it. Asking about a company culture is extremely important because you want to make sure it's something that you're looking for as well.
Absolutely. Definitely. Thank you. All right. Do we have anything else to add before we move on to the next slide? Leah? Leah, I think we're having a little trouble hearing you.
Sound a little better.
Yes, that's great.
To speak to Heather's point, yeah, I think it is so crucial to be prepared. Coming up to us with questions, and I can't tell you how many times people come up to us and say, yeah, you know, something about healthcare, and we don't do healthcare, so just know what you're talking about. To the second point on here, where the best places to find more about a company, I would say, you know, prior to the career fair, do a little bit of homework and find the companies who you plan on approaching. Going to the company website, even if you just go to Google and type in, you know, the company name and try to find a little bit more about you know, the company culture. LinkedIn is a great place to look. I'm all over LinkedIn, and I'm sure, as you know, recruiters, a lot of us are. So you know, you can do a little bit of research just on the people that are going to be at the fair, especially in, you know, on Handshake, you can see our employer profile. So that would be a great idea, something that you can definitely do to come prepared.
Absolutely. Handshake is a great resource, especially when preparing for the fair. Thank you for mentioning that, each of you. So yes, just emphasizing the importance of research and making sure that you start scheduling those conversations as soon as possible so you're prepared and you know who you're going to talk to. Great. Moving on, when you're thinking about what you can offer a company, you should be thinking about your transferable skills. Your transferable skills are those that you acquire from all of your experiences and can be carried over and developed further in later experiences. They're what tie them all together. These career competencies are crucial. These are the skills that employers look for the most in college-level hires and what you want to showcase the most. Listed here on your screen, you can see that the career competencies identified by NACE, otherwise known as the National Association of Colleges and Employers, include the critical thinking and problem solving, oral and written communication, teamwork and collaboration, the efficient use of technology, leadership skills, professionalism and a strong work ethic, self-awareness, and career development, and a global perspective. So reflecting on this again, let's turn to our employer panel and ask them what are the best ways that students can convey their skill sets during conversations at the career fair. Does anybody have any insight on that?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first again. So, like you mentioned, you know, transferable skills are probably the most important thing that, you know, we look for as employers at a career fair. So I think a best way to convey that is explaining your experience, right? Now, obviously, you know, doesn't matter what your major is. You know, for a lot of positions, you know, for me personally, we hire a lot of comm majors. We hire a lot of people that were in, you know, this kind of program. You know, for example, our CEO was a history major from Auburn, right? So that's obviously not a business or sales degree. So, you know, your major is only one small part of, you know, what you develop with your transferable skills. So I think you can use all parts of your background to convey transferable skills, whether it's, you know, maybe you were a server and you learned time management, how to work in a fast pace, how to work with people. Maybe you were part of an organization on campus, maybe athletics, you know, Greek life, organizations, things like that. So I think, you know, conveying your transferable skills through your experiences, not just your resume. Not just your major, is important.
100%. I like that you mentioned the experience, even if you're a server, which you may immediately think, oh, this isn't related to what I'd like to do long term, or my experiences on campus, because all of that contributes to what makes you a qualified employee in the future as well. I saw Heather earlier unmute her mic. Would you like to talk as well?
Yes. So one other thing too is be able to back up what you're saying with evidence. So if you say you're a critical thinker or a problem solver, have an example as to when that actually happened. You don't want to catch yourself, I hate to say it, in a lie, but a lot of times people try to talk themselves up but can't back it up. So you want to make sure that you have some, you know, situations or experiences in mind that you can talk to when speaking to an employer, because you never know when they're going to ask you for an actual example. And even if you think it's not the best, any example you can give that is going to show that competency is only going to help you in the end.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for contributing that.
I'll finish it up. You guys, Jordan and Heather, you both hit it, nail on the head. I was going to say exactly the same two things. So don't shy away from telling me about, your food industry experience just because it's not directly related to what you want to be doing in your career. Transferable skills are, crucial. That's exactly what I look for. I'm not expecting you to come in having sales experience. I always give the example of when I worked my way through college and I was a barista at Starbucks. I learned how to deal with difficult people that didn't have their morning coffee yet, and that was tough. And so I think that's a very, that's a conversation I can really appreciate. And like Heather said, use examples. Everyone's going to tell me that they're a great leader. Everyone's going to tell me that they are professional and have great communication skills. But give me an example or two, and really explain how you've really worked that muscle and how you've developed that skill.
Yeah, I think kind of going off that, no one's ever going to tell you they're not a hard worker, but we know not everyone is going to be someone that is really gritty and resilient. So yeah, I think giving examples and kind of showing that. I think also just when you are explaining, your transferable skills, do it passionately, right? Make it your own, right? No one's ever going to, really blandly tell you I'm really outgoing, right? I know you're not outgoing. I can see it right now, right? So I think, speaking passionately, obviously, I don't want you to rehearse it, but I definitely want you to prepare and be able to do that. So yeah, definitely, I think those are all really good points.
Yeah, I agree with Josh. Do not rehearse it because we can tell when it's rehearsed as opposed to prepared. Because you want it to be authentic. You want it, like Josh said, make it about you, make it about yourself and what you can bring to the table over somebody else.
Absolutely. Thank you all for contributing to that conversation. I think it's important to let students know what each recruiter is looking for, and how they know they can convey their skill sets in those conversations. Right, moving on, we're going to talk about preparing for the fair, and the last step would be to create an elevator pitch. And if you've not heard this phrase before, an elevator pitch is simply a brief bio used to introduce yourself to other professionals, and you should only use about 15 to 30 seconds to introduce yourself, your major, and year. Now, these first impressions are crucial, so it will be helpful if you plan your introductions ahead of time. Make sure to be friendly and have what you're going to say ready or an idea of it. Be sure to describe your interest in the company as well as any relevant experience you may have, being as specific as possible. Again, tying in our panelist responses, talking about having things to back up your claims. You can also offer your resume or contact information to the employer, and thank them for their time and consideration. One of the resources we have available is our elevator pitch activity, where you can develop and tailor your elevator pitch for each company you meet with, and it will be available to download for participants of this webinar. It's currently in our handout section, so make sure to go and refer to that document if you'd like to do that activity before the fair. Moving on to your resume, before you actually attend the fair, there are a couple of things you should do. The first being to polish your resume. We recommend you make an appointment online, registering for a virtual critique via handshake with one of our career coaches. You have to make sure that it's customized for the field or the industry that you're looking to go into, because your resume should convey the unique qualifications and skills you can bring to that employer. With that in mind, let's now get into what you can personally do to help your resume. And the first of that being uploading it to Handshake so you and fellow employers can see that. To our employers, how should students be sharing their resume with employers? And what do you look for on a resume? Not necessarily so much with the formatting of it, but with the content.
So one thing that I always recommend to anyone I speak to, especially if you're still in school, is create a personalized email on a different platform. When I was still in grad school, I submitted applications, and then at the end I kept my Quinnipiac email address on there, only to find out that they canceled it. So I actually missed out on opportunities. But if you create one like heather.mchugh@, and this way, if you keep it just for job applications, you'll be able to see just what comes in as opposed to filtering through spam email. show your accomplishments as well. You know, if you work in, you know, a call center and you say that you answer phone calls, yes, I know that. I worked in a call center for 9 years. What did you do beyond that to show that you were, you know, set yourself above everybody else? Were you on any special projects? Things like that, anything that will set you apart from other people.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have anything to add to that?
I'll add that too. So this is Leah. So when I was in college, something that I found really helpful because I was looking for, you know, a variety of different roles. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after college. I had multiple versions of my resume saved, and I saved them as, you know, resume for accounting roles, resume for marketing roles. So you want to make sure the resume that is for a marketing position is tailored to the skills that a recruiter would look for their role in marketing. If they see accounting specific skills, they're probably not going to think you're the best fit. So that's something that I would definitely recommend doing if you're, you know, a CLAS student that may be applying to multiple, you know, different types of roles.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's huge. You know, at the very top, obviously we interview for an account manager sales role. So if I see at the top of a resume, I'm looking for a financial analyst position, or I'm looking for, like a writing position, I'm automatically thinking, all right, well, this person's probably not going to be interested in this opportunity or be a good fit. So yeah, I definitely think having multiple resumes to fit the occasion is important. And then I think being able to speak to each thing on your resume, right? Because sometimes we're going to look at things and say, all right, tell me about that experience. And if you don't really have an idea of how to articulate what you did, you know, once again, I'm not calling you a liar, but, you know, you want to be able to speak to that and speak about it passionately. Obviously, learn, you know, what you learn from that, what transferable skills. And one thing I think we mentioned it already, but I love when people put, you know, their extracurriculars on their resume. You know, if you're involved in a sport, let me know about that. You know, I think, you know, being a Division I athlete is literally almost being like a full-time opportunity, a full-time job or part-time job for students. So I want to know about that, right? I want to know about, you know, what involvement you had on campus, things like that. I always say, you know, especially, you know, when you're a senior or, you know, if you're applying for internships as jobs as well, send your resume out, right? You know, so you want to have it on your LinkedIn profile. You want to have it when people are responding to you through LinkedIn, like, you know, attach your resume because they're going to need it, right? Use it on Handshake. Use it, you know, when you go to a career fair, bring extra copies of your resume. So I think, you know, definitely, you know, have a nice resume, have your contact info on there, of course. I think those are all important things, you know, when you're at a career fair or just, you know, using Handshake and just using a resume in general.
Absolutely. Now, one more question before we move on, just to think about it more in recent times. Our office is encouraging students who had opportunities this summer that were canceled due to COVID to list them on their resumes. Do you have any insight on that? Have you seen a resume with something like that on there? And how would you feel about someone mentioning that opportunity in the process they went through to get that?
Yeah, I would say if you have room on your resume to put that, I would obviously, you know, make sure that you do put that, you know, it didn't happen because of COVID. If you don't have room to put it, you know, you can obviously explain why you did not have an internship that summer, or, hey, I was going to have a sales internship, or I was going to have this internship or this position. It didn't work out because of COVID, but this is why I wanted that opportunity. So once again, it's kind of either part of your elevator pitch or just part of, you know, you kind of presenting yourself to employers about, hey, like, I didn't not get one, I had one, it, you know, it fell through. But this is why I was interested in that opportunity. So I definitely think if you could fit it on your resume, you could put it. Just make sure that you put that you didn't actually have the internship. And then if you're not able to put it on there, you can still also mention that when you're talking to employers.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I say put it on there because it shows that you actually were selected for it. So, you know, if we don't know about it, or if you don't have it on there, we have no way of knowing. And that could be a differentiator depending on the position you're applying for.
And I'll add that I actually have seen some resumes that have said this, and I think it's great. It's definitely another topic of conversation in the process. And let's not downplay the fact that it's hard to get an internship. So I definitely want to see that you put in the effort, and you know, pay off, and you actually did earn the internship, whether or not, regardless of if you actually did it or not. You know, I still would like to see that.
Great, thank you. That's really great to hear from a recruiting standpoint. Thank you all. Now moving on. So, all right, it's the week of the career fairs. What do you do? Where do you go? How do you start? For those who haven't been before, here are some general tips to prepare you. We recommend that you start scheduling employer conversations as soon as possible. Scheduling is open now and is open on a first come, first served basis. And slots will be available for last minute signups as well. So day of, week of, you can still sign up. We recommend you leaving yourself enough time between conversations to get yourself adjusted. And if one conversation runs long or you have a great conversation with an employer, you don't want to have to cut that short to run to your next conversation. So avoid that if you can. Also, if you make a list of employers and you know which one you want to prioritize the most, work your way up to that number one employer. Start with a few other conversations to get acclimated to the process. Also, we recommend you have your resume critiqued by the Center for Career Development. Again, we offer virtual critiques via Handshake, and we're here to support you as you prepare for the fair. Now, if you're wondering what to wear for the fair, the gold standard is to dress for success. Think about what you would wear to an interview. Having a professional business outfit is very important for this event. A full suit, a pantsuit, or a skirt suit is recommended. If you have nice dress pants and a button-down shirt or a blouse, this works well. This being said, in the case of our virtual career fair, there won't be this level of immediacy. Regardless, hold on to this idea and use it to guide your decisions at interviews and career fairs in the future. When you're engaging with employers, the goal is to establish a rapport with each recruiter. Smile, make eye contact through your screen if you choose to have your video on, and begin with your tailored elevator pitch. Don't be afraid to ask questions about the recruitment process or open positions. Again, that's demonstrated interest. You can also ask each representative for contact information, which is more important than ever as employers can't simply hand you their business cards in person. Also, do not forget to thank each employer for taking the time to speak with you and make sure you write down any key takeaways. What we're now going to look at are two different scenarios in which a student approaches a table and the potential outcomes for each. So employer A is outgoing and leads the conversation. They ask the student lots of probing questions to be as informative as possible. Whereas employer B is more introverted and relies on the student to drive the conversation. They like to simply respond to questions rather than ask them. Now, each of our employers, any of you can chime in and just discuss what your style is. Are you more outgoing? Do you prefer to lead the conversation? Or do you prefer to have the students be more, excuse me, outgoing as you rely on them to drive the conversation?
I might be cheating a little bit here. I would definitely categorize myself as a little bit of more employer A, where we're outgoing over here. I would say though, for us, the candidates that we're looking for are similar, personalities to us, where you're engaging, you're outgoing as well. So, a typical student for my position and what we look for, I want them to meet me energy-wise, right? I want them to be able to drive that conversation, feed off my energy, ask, kind of flip it back on me a little bit. So I think it should be a really good give and take. But once again, that depends on the position, right? My position calls for, energy, enthusiasm, charisma. Not as much maybe for another position, but for me personally, I think I would be employer A, and I want a candidate that would be also employer A.
Absolutely, for sure.
I would say I agree. I'm more of an employer A, but I think it is a give and take depending on the position as well as the candidate. Not everybody shows that enthusiasm, in a verbal way. So, I have plenty of nurses who are very introverted, but they are the best nurses I've ever seen. So it really depends on the position and just how passionately they talk about it, and just, understanding that not everybody responds and reacts the same way, but just listen to what they're saying and what they're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. Now, being that these two employer scenarios are different, employer A surely offers the student a little bit more content-wise to feed off of for conversations, but how can a student still make an interaction with employer B valuable?
I'll speak to that. I think just coming in with confidence and being prepared. I think the more prepared you are, the more confident you will therefore be. I am definitely more on the employer A, but I do try to match the energy that comes with the personality of a student. So if they aren't necessarily on the same level and they're not as outgoing, I'll tone it down a little bit. But I do like to start by being very energetic and getting them excited and comfortable with the conversation. But then I really want the student to take over and ask questions. So either way, I think go into that conversation well prepared and ready to lead the conversation, expecting that you're going to be asking all of the questions, and you'll be good either way.
Definitely, thank you.
I would also say write down just like key points that you may want to talk about or let the recruiter know. I've gone to career fairs, when I was still in school, and made notes about the employer that I wanted to talk to, as well as notes about myself, so I did not forget something. It's nerve-wracking. We've all been there as recruiters. We can all attest to the times when we've had to go to career fairs to look for a job. So just know that we've all been in your shoes, and try to be as confident as possible. But if you need that extra help, just have a notebook, write down a couple things, and just refer back to that. Just don't have your face in your notebook the entire time. Look me in the eye as much as possible.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for insight. Alrighty, now moving on, now that we've gotten this perspective from our employers, after you've left the career fair, make sure you send thank you notes to each employer that you've met with. This is the step most students forget or leave out. You can do this via email or even through LinkedIn, but make sure you send them within 24 to 48 hours. About 2 weeks after the fair, you can follow up with organizations and companies that you're still interested in or where you have applied to jobs. You can do this by contacting the recruiter and expressing a continued interest, or by asking questions about the application process. Now, for those on our panel today, what is your preferred method of follow-up, and what should be included in a follow-up message / how detailed should it be?
I'd like to start with this one. So I prefer email just because I have a folder in my email box for students. One thing though, with asking and about the status of an application, we have over 2,000 open positions. If there's 100 candidates per position, let's do the math here. We don't always have the time to check your status, but it's something that you could always log back in and check yourself. If there's no updates, there's really not much that I can do other than say I can send them an email, but I'm not 100% sure right then and there. So it's just understanding that the recruiter may not always have an answer right away or be able to check the status for you, but that's something that you could always check yourself by logging back into where you submitted your application.
Yeah, I would say I also prefer email. It makes it very easy to kind of track rather than getting lost in the shuffle on maybe Handshake or on LinkedIn. So, if you have an ongoing LinkedIn conversation, you can respond on LinkedIn, but for after a career fair, I definitely recommend email. Obviously our emails are everywhere. It's on Handshake, on LinkedIn, maybe, we have it from before the fair. So I definitely prefer email. I always do make sure when you do send a thank you email, number one, make sure that grammar is correct and make sure there's no fumbles up there, because you don't want to rule yourself out because of that. And I always like putting in like a little personal touch. Now you don't have to give a whole story, but call back something from that conversation, whether it was maybe it was a UConn alum that you met and go, oh, like I love talking to another Husky, or maybe you talked about maybe of the same taste in music, or maybe of the same beach house on the Cape. Kind of call back, that way it shows personal touch. That's always a good thing, and obviously show that you're eager for the opportunity. If you need to attach your resume again, like that can't hurt whatsoever. So I always recommend that. And then like I mentioned, follow up if you haven't heard back, maybe 2 weeks afterwards. Maybe that would be a call. So if you haven't heard back by email, maybe call, but usually you'll hear back, way before then.
Thank you for that. It's always great to hear what the different people prefer from a recruiter standpoint, but thank you both. So moving on, following the career fair, it's also very important that you assess your experience and plan for the next one. Reflect on your strengths and weaknesses, what you managed to accomplish, and make any notes on changes you may need to make to increase your success. You can also visit our office virtually to meet with one of our career consultants to explore career options or learn more about the job search process. And always keeping in mind that career development is a learning process and a lifelong experience, and our office is here to help. So after you leave today, additional resources for you to prepare include this webinar recording, which will be emailed to you. We have a YouTube video entitled Student Guide to Husky Mentor Network and the Virtual Career Fair, which will touch on our career fair that we did last semester, even though it's in a different platform, just get an idea. For up-to-date information, we have our 10 virtual career fair tips you need to know blog at career.uconn.edu, which is our website, as well as virtual resume critiques, practice interviews, and career coaching appointments, which are all available via Handshake. We also have career on demand videos about elevator pitches, follow-up notes, and thank you notes, and anything else that you may need. Just a quick refresher on. Here's our contact information for those of you who are interested. And remember, all of this information is on our website at career.uconn.edu. So now, thank you all so much for coming. This concludes the content we have on navigating the career fair as a CLAS major. Now we're going to move into the question and answer session. So as a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. All right, so starting now, our first question we have for the panelists, how is your approach different for the virtual fair than it is for in-person fairs? Are your goals the same or different? Now, any of you can touch on this.
In person is always, to me personally, better than virtual, but because we cannot do that, really have the same expectations. Obviously, we understand, we might have like a minute or two of technical difficulties in the very beginning, but for me, I'm looking for the same kind of person. It's the same opportunity. It's just a virtual fair instead of in person. But I think nothing has changed too much besides trying to navigate how to use Handshake. But besides that, nothing really changes from an expectation standpoint, at least me personally.
It's same here. I hold the same expectations. We're all in the same boat, right? Like nobody wants what's going on, to happen, but it is. So we all just have to adjust accordingly. But that shouldn't diminish your abilities to give me the best, conversation that you can provide. I think just treating it as if it weren't in person can sometimes help you, but just try not to let it freak you out.
Definitely. Thank you. All right, I guess we'll move on to our next question. Is it even worth me signing up for a time to talk to an employer if my major doesn't align with what the company does? Now, I can speak to this briefly, but I'd love to hear from one of our employer panelists as well. Especially as a CLAS major, there is so much value in your degree in that you benefit from a wide range of classes, you have a wide range of transferable skills, and you can market yourself into any position that you feel you are interested in going into in your career. I know Jordan talked about that briefly earlier. Even if you want to go into a vastly different career, you can still talk about how valuable maybe your serving experience was, or like Leah mentioned, working as a barista at Starbucks. So definitely sign up for a time to talk with an employer, if anything, just to network and to get to learn more about the company, and to show what skills you can offer as well. Do any of our employers have anything to say on that as well?
Yeah, I think just kind of following up on what you just mentioned, like I said, our CEO is a history major, right? I'm in our Boston office, and a couple of our sales managers were pre-vet, pre-med. They were English majors. So, at the end of the day, like I mentioned, we hire people based off intangible skills, and a lot of positions are really similar to that as well. Now, I want someone with an upbeat personality, self-motivated, career-driven, wants an environment where they fit in culture-wise, and all of those things don't really, adhere to a specific major, right? So I think, like I mentioned, it depends on what the person's looking for, right? If they're looking for something that doesn't fit their major technically, to me, if you can tell me why you match my position, it doesn't matter what your major was, in my personal experience. Obviously, if you're interviewing for like an accounting role, that might be a little bit different. But for me personally, major is something that I don't put too much stock into because it's more of a personality, intangible kind of job.
Thank you, Jordan. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with that. With Hartford Healthcare, we're more than just nurses and doctors. There are so many different avenues that you can go down. And, if a nurse, we do require, a nursing degree and license, but other positions, just because you're one major doesn't mean that you can't get a different type of job. And one door could open another, like Jordan was saying, his CEO was an English major, was it? In my last position, the director of health and safety started off scrubbing tanks that had hazardous waste in it. So there's so many different avenues you can go down to get to where you want to be or find a completely different career path. So I say go for it. Just be able to show me how it applies to the positions or the company that you're talking to.
Yes, thank you, Heather. That's great. Again, that insight is really invaluable. All right, I think we should move on to the next question. Here I see, is there a list of employers who will be at the career fair? Yes, that's uploaded into Handshake. If you go into each respective fair for each day, Monday through Friday, you'll find a different list of employers, and you can peruse that list there starting now.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that. So when you go to the event section on Handshake, you'll see each of the fairs and you'll see a very short list of employers. But once you register, you'll be able to see many more employers. So just make sure you register for the one that you are interested in.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for adding that, Aaliyah. That's great to know. Right. Here we have one from a student. I have one leadership position that I've had since I began college 2 years ago, but that would be the only one. If I'm looking for a second example, I would say that I was captain of the swim team in high school. Would mentioning something from high school be worth it for transferable skills such as leadership and communication, or would it be better not to? Now, from a resume standpoint, before we hear from our employer panelists, typically we recommend students include things that were in high school if they do not have any additional college experience yet up until around their junior year. So you do have time if you'd like to include that on your resume, absolutely. And if you want to include it in conversations with employers. But I'd like to hear what our panelists feel like on that.
Honestly, I prefer not to hear about high school. I think though the positions that I'm recruiting for are a different type of position. But if there's only, one example, then, just be honest, but be able to back up why you only have one. If you're telling me that you were taking, 6 classes a semester and you were in a club and that you had a part-time job, that's an example enough for me. That's all I need to hear. But if you're telling me that you took 4 classes and that was it, then that's a different story. Then I think, why didn't you do other things? But I prefer just to not hear about high school.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like she mentioned, like Heather said, I usually, recruit for full-time. So, seniors or juniors entering their summer of senior year for the internship. So usually by then, people have experience. So I don't, need to hear too much about high school. But if you are a freshman looking for an opportunity. Maybe, yeah, you can talk about that, or you've been working since high school. Like, I think that's something that kind of shows me someone's personality, their grit, where they can say, hey, I have that experience in college, this leadership experience, or this, activity. But, me personally, I've been working since I was 14. Like, that is a good example that doesn't talk about your experience in high school, but it says who you are as a person. But yeah, I would kind of stay away from talking about, like high school athletics if you are a junior, senior, looking for full-time or like senior year internships.
Thank you for that insight. I know each recruiter feels differently. In the case of this student who asked the question, they do have a leadership experience since they've been at college. So, and those conversations definitely emphasize that career leadership experience, because that is definitely valuable. All right, next question we have is for our employers. Can you tell a story of a student who you still remember because of something unique they did at a career fair, or any other advice how to stand out?
Yeah, I can take that one first, I guess. So this was a couple years ago. This person's actually in our leadership academy, our leadership council in our Boston office. So I met her at a career fair. She had a mutual connection in the company, but never talked to her before. So I invited her to meet me at the career fair. It was a great conversation. I did mention, it was like halfway through the fair, I was starving. I remember I was just really hungry because I don't like to go eat lunch. I'm there for a couple hours to talk to students. So I mentioned in conversation. It was a great conversation. We set her up for an interview the next day on campus. But so she was good to go. She did not have to come back. But she came back with a couple of like the employer lounge cookies. I was gonna say, like, hey, like here's a couple quick things. I know you're hungry. I'm like, wow, like did not need to do that. Obviously, it's like a super small gesture, but just kind of she called back the conversation. She actually was an active listener, which was awesome. And then the next day she brought more of them, which I'm like, hey, I don't hate getting free cookies, right? So something that's super small, but that attention to detail, that just like that small little touch, just kind of went a long way because you remember a person, right? We're meeting, usually dozens of people at a career fair, even if it's virtually. You're meeting a lot of students. So whatever way you can stand out, that was a huge way. That's a small little gesture, and obviously, that personal touch and that care and that kind of, personality does really well for us. So I remember that, so a couple years ago, but yeah, obviously it's paid off because she's still doing really well with us.
So I have a really great example and then a really bad example. So my really great example actually was last year at the UConn career fair. There was a student, his name was Matthew. I saw him walk by the table, but he kind of walked a little slow. And then he was with some friends, left them, walked up to us, said, "Hi, Heather, my name is Matthew." And it turns out he was trying to read my name tag to know my name before he walked up to me. He had direct eye contact. He had his resume just in hand waiting for me, and just spoke to a lot of things that were applicable to Hartford Healthcare. So he really prepared himself. My bad example is, and this happens unfortunately more than not at different places, I actually had a student swear because they got so comfortable in the conversation that they forgot they were talking to a recruiter. So just remember to check yourself, remember who you're talking to. This is your first impression with the company. So you want to make sure that you are remaining professional. Even if the conversation seems like it's going great, you really want to make sure you remember, it is like an interview. So just watch what you say.
Absolutely, that's a great example. I know recruiters do a lot to make sure people they're talking to feel comfortable, especially I know the three of you talked about your great experiences at fairs and how you like to engage with students. So those are both great examples. Thank you. All right, we can do, it looks like we have one more question. This one, it can either be answered by one of our career coaches or by an employer panelist, depending on whether or not you've participated in this fair and maybe have had this experience. But what do you suggest we do if we have technical issues during the fair, like our Wi-Fi breaking up? I'm worried about this because I've had some issues for my classes. This is a great question.
Yeah, that happens to me on a daily basis with my Zoom calls with my internet. Provide a phone number that, and just be honest, say I'm having, internet connectivity issues. I would like to provide you with a phone number in case this drops. Would you be able to call me back? Or is there a number that I can call you at? I think just letting them know and just, you know, if it's really bad where it keeps dropping,
Heather, are you still there?
yeah, I'm still here.
All right, awesome. Yeah, that was great advice. Does anyone else have any insight on that, that last question?
Yeah, I agree with her. I think, a backup is always a phone call, especially because, this is the beginning of the interview process. So you're probably going to meet face to face virtually a couple more times before any offers would be made. So, I mean, if the first career fair just doesn't go well that way and ends up being a phone call, not the worst thing in the world. But I do prefer video on when you are at a career fair.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that insight on that question. And with that, I'm just going to make sure we don't have any other questions lined up. And I'd just like to thank you all for your time today. Thank you for being a part of this experience for students and for providing some guidance as they go into this virtual career fair week. Thank you all.
Of course.
Thank you. And I hope to hear from each of you soon and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.